All right, today we are going to be looking at a few more constructions. To help us with these constructions, we first need to talk about one of the conjectures that you have got in your definition packet. So on the bottom of the page with perpendicular bisectors, medians, and midsegments, you're going to find the shortest distance conjecture. This conjecture is trying to talk about what is the shortest distance between a point, which I've got drawn here, P, and a line. So I want to think about what's the fastest way to get from here back to the line. Well, I know I could be thinking about drawing a line anywhere here to get myself from P back to the line. But the question is, which one's going to be the fastest or the shortest distance? Well, the shortest distance would be going straight down to the line, not taking any time to go on a diagonal, anything like that. This always makes me think of back when I used to play softball. My coach would always tell me the shortest distance between like where you are and first base is a straight line. So we want to get the ball back to the line as fast as possible, going straight. So the question is, what is this line that I just drew? Well, what this is that is a perpendicular segment. So it's kind of similar to the perpendicular bisector we've been working on, but obviously we can see in this line, this point is not the midpoint. This is not dividing things. So that's why we don't say it's a perpendicular bisector, but it's a perpendicular segment going straight down to that point, creating that 90-degree angle when we do so. Now, why we need to know about this conjecture is because what we're going to be doing today is figuring out how could we construct that perpendicular bisector? How can I construct a perpendicular segment to a line? We have two different cases that we are going to be looking at with that. We're going to see how do we do that when I give you a point on the line, and then also how we're going to be able to do that if I give you a point like we had here, floating in the air. So make sure you've got this drawn, make sure you've got this copied in your definition packet, so we can then move on and look at our constructions. All right, so we're going to look at our first construction now. We are going to look at how to draw the perpendicular to a line through a given point on the line. So make sure that you copy that title for yourself, and then go ahead and draw yourself a nice long line on your note sheet. So you can see I made it the entire width of my paper, just because then I'm going to have lots of room to be able to work with this. I might even be able to get two constructions on the same line here. So this construction has us building this perpendicular through a point on the line. So I'm going to draw that point for us right there. I'm going to call it point K. What you call it doesn't matter. So when we are going to be doing this construction, the way we are going to start is we are going to take the pointy end of our compass and put it on K. Then I'm going to open my compass to, they call it a medium opening. Really just get it open enough that you're a little ways away from K, but you're still on the line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make two arcs. We're going to make one on this side of my point K. And then without changing my compass size, I'm going to turn it around, pointy end on K again, and draw another arc on the other side of K. So I just have my compass opened and I drew an arc on either side. What we have now done is we have created 2 points for ourselves here, which I'm going to call P and Q. So now what we need to do is be able to build ourselves our perpendicular. Now this part is going to hopefully feel really familiar to you, because now this is very similar to what we've done to build the perpendicular bisector. I've got my two endpoints, so I'm going to treat this construction just like that one. We're going to put the pointy end on one of those new points we created, so I'm putting it on P, and then I'm going to open my compass so that it is far enough that it's landing somewhere between K and Q, so between those 2 points. Now, with my pointy end on P, I am going to make an arc up above. Then I'm going to switch around and do the same thing from Q. So pointy end on Q, make that mark to create that X in the sky. Now, the nice part about this one is rather than having to do it again under the line, like our perpendicular bisector did, I only need this one X because I know that I'm connecting it to this point that we started with. So I'm going to connect that intersection point to K. In doing so, I have constructed the perpendicular segment to that original line that we started with. So it's got a lot of similar vibes to what we've already been doing. It's just now, instead of having to work with the segment and build on top and bottom, we've got to build out from that point, creating those lines and then connecting the points. Let's look at one more example together. I'm going to use just the other side of my line here. I'm going to make another point that we're going to call point D. Now we're going to go through and do the same thing again. So we're going to start pointy end on D, opening our compass so it's not like crazy close because that would be hard to work with. So something kind of medium sized about there. And we're going to make a mark on one side of my line or my point. Then we're going to flip my compass around, pointy end back on D, and do the same thing on the other side. So I have created those 2 points. We'll call them A and B this time. So now we can think of these basically as the endpoints from our bisectors that we've done before. So pointy end on A, opening past my given point, so over halfway. And we're going to make our arc on one direction. Then we're going to put our pointy end on B and do the same thing the other direction to get that X in the sky and the intersection point. Once we've got that, we can go ahead and connect to those points to have that perpendicular. So it's very similar to what we've already done. So hopefully you can use that to help you be able to do this construction. I would like you now to go ahead and do at least one more of these on your own. I want you to draw yourself a new line, because chances are you're probably out of room on yours. Put that point on there, and then use it to create that perpendicular using the construction we just did. Once you have done that, you will come back to the video and we'll look at how can we go the opposite direction. If I give you this point, how can we make the perpendicular? So go ahead, try this one on your own. All right, now that you have gotten a chance to try the construction this direction, now we're going to look and see what happens if we're working with a point not on the line. So again, go ahead, title your paper, perpendicular to a line through a point not on the line. And you're going to need to draw yourself another nice long line. So we are building this perpendicular from the point off of the line. So I'm going to draw in that point for myself there. So when I want to be doing this construction this direction, we are going to start with the pointy end of our compass on P, and we are going to open our compass wide enough that we are past the line. So as you can see, I'm past my line, so this would be an okay width for me. What I am going to do is I'm going to make 2 arcs through the line. So we're going to have one over here and then one over here. So using pointy end on P with that length or that width open past the line, 2 marks on either side. So we create 2 intersection points here with our line. We're here and we're here. So let's call them what? We'll go R and S. Well, now that I have these points, we're going to be able to do exactly what we were just doing. Now we can use these to help us come up with that perpendicular. So it's going to feel just like what we were just doing and like what we do with our perpendicular bisector. So I'm going to put the pointy end of my compass on one of my points, making sure that my compass is open at least halfway between my R and S. And we're going to make an arc. This time I'm going to work below my line, just because that's where I've got the room. Then we're going to put the pointy end on S, switch things up, and do the exact same thing. Make an arc there. So we get that intersection cross. This time it's just below the line. Well, if I've got these 2 points now, I can connect them into that perpendicular that we are looking for. So it's very similar, just it's how we're getting these 2 outside points that is different. Rather than creating it from the point in the middle, we're just creating it from the point on the side. But then the whole second half of this is exactly the same as what we were just doing. So let's do one more together here. Let's have point A floating in the sky. Again, we're going to open our compass or put our pointy end on that point and make sure it's open farther than the line. Once I've got that size, we're going to make my 2 arcs through the line. So I've got those 2 intersection pieces here and here. Well, once we've got those points, we're just finding the perpendicular like we've always done. So pointy end on one side, open at least halfway. We're going to make 1 arc underneath, then flip everything around and do the same thing the other direction to get that crossing X. That cross is going to tell me where we are connecting to get that perpendicular. Right, so it's very similar to what we were just doing. If you can do the perpendicular from the point on the line, it's almost the same as when you have the point off the line here. So I would like you to go ahead and try one more of these on your own. So I want to be able to see a total of 3 of them when you are done. Then come back to the video because we've got one more construction that we need to look at with this. All right, now that we know how to construct these perpendiculars, we can talk about what good is this going to do us. We can use this to talk about the altitude of a triangle. Now, this is something that you have on your definition packet, hopefully already, that you looked at. An altitude of a triangle, that is the perpendicular segment from the vertex to the opposite side, or to a line containing the opposite side. That sounds very complicated, very extra fancy. All that's saying is we're going from one point of the triangle all the way across to the other side of the triangle using perpendiculars to do so. So we're going straight to it, the fastest way. Well, we know that there are 3 different ways that this can happen. The altitude can be inside of the triangle. It can be outside of the triangle. Notice I extended my line to be able to get it there. Or it can be the side of a triangle. Basically, why we want to be able to know the altitude is this is the height of the triangle. So if we can figure out this length, we can tell how tall our triangle is going to be. So we are going to work on constructing that altitude. So what I need you to do in your construction notes, go ahead and title altitude of a triangle, and then draw this triangle on your notes for me, because we're going to go through and find the altitude of it. All right, so the first thing that we are going to do to come up with this altitude is we are going to extend the sides of one of the ends of the triangle. So I'm going to extend this side. So I'm going to use my straight edge to just make my triangle sides longer. So I've got all the room that I need to be able to do this construction. And you'll see why we're doing this in a minute. So I have extended that first side. Now what we are going to do is we are going to put the pointy end of our compass on R and extend it past our line. Hopefully this is starting to sound familiar, because all we're doing here is our perpendicular segment construction we just did. This is the line. Here's the point off of the line that we are going to work with. So think about, how did we do that construction? Well, we have our pointy end on the point, opening our compass beyond that line. And I'm going to make 2 arcs. So we've got those 2 intersection points on my line. So it looks like we've got a point here, and I've got a point here just past that that vertex Q. Well, now I know that I'm finding the perpendicular between those points. So pointy end on one, opening my compass at least halfway. We're going to make an arc this direction. Oh, and I lost it a little bit, so I'm going to redo that one. Compass moved, so I'm going to remeasure. Pointy end, pencil over halfway. We're going to have 1 arc. Then we're going to come to the other point and be able to do our second arc. Once I've got that little X, I know that we can connect that. Now, since we are working with the altitude, I know that I'm trying to connect this point to the opposite line. So that is what we are going to connect with here. My intersection of the cross is going to intersect with R, creating that perpendicular. That is the altitude of our triangle then, since it went straight through that, or from the point all the way to the other side, giving that perpendicular. So we're using the exact same construction. We're just putting it into the context of a triangle now, instead of looking at it just on the individual line like we were doing before. So that's one way that we can be doing the altitude. The other thing that we could be thinking of is the outside case, meaning that we are going to be looking at a altitude that exists outside of our triangle. So if you think back to your definition packet, I'm looking at something kind of like this. So for this, we're going to want to label our outside case, and we're going to go ahead and draw ourselves a triangle here. All right, so I'm going to draw the triangle that we are going to be working with. I'm going to make it look like this. So go ahead, draw yourself that triangle as well. And I'm going to label it the same as before. So we've got P, Q, and R. So now we are going to start this the exact same way. We've got to extend one of the sides of our triangle. So we've got the room that we need to be able to do this construction. So I'm going to extend that line. So that tells me that it is point R that we are going to be working on building this altitude from. So we're going to do this then the exact same way. We're going to have our compass on R, extend past the line, and create our 2 arcs. So I've got my arc here, and I've got my other arc there to create those 2 points that we need for intersecting that line. Well, now let's go ahead, pointy end on one side of my line, create an arc in the sky. Same thing on the other side, create that arc in the sky for us. So once we are done, we can put that point there and use that to help us connect. Now it looks like the way I drew my triangle, we'll see, it might have gone outside. Oh, it actually, I almost drew a 90-degree angle, or a 90-degree triangle for us already. So we can see that we ended up actually just inside the triangle. So based on how I drew it, I didn't quite get to an outside, but the process is still going to be the same, because it would just mean that I've got a line kind of like going that way or something. But notice how I did that construction was exactly the same in both cases. You're extending that line, then putting our point on that opposite end, and then working on the same construction that we just did, using what we know about our perpendicular not through the line to help us with that triangle. So what I would like you to do is draw one more triangle for yourself, and I would like you to find the altitude of that. When you are finished with that, you are going to submit your notes for today. So I should see a total of 3 of our perpendiculars from the point on the line, 3 of our perpendiculars not from the point, not on the line, and then I should see 3 altitudes as well for today. Submit all of those on Schoology. Then if you've got any class time remaining, you can use it to work on your practice packet. All of the details about problems that you can do are on Schoology. Remember, that's going to be due at the end of the week, so use some time if you've got it now to get a little bit of that done. If you've got questions on any of this while you're working, send me an email. I'll help you out best I can. Make sure you submit these notes for me. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.